Thanks everyone for joining us today, and for those of you catching this masterclass on replay, I'm going to go ahead and make a start. So today's masterclass is eradicating ANTS, or automatic negative thoughts, with the self-kindness compass. Sorry, got that around the wrong way. So what are ANTS? If you've never heard of them before, ANTS, or automatic negative thoughts, are the thoughts that pop into our head in response to a trigger, and they can make us feel like we've lost control of our own thoughts and fill us with anxiety and guilt and a host of other negative emotions. So they actually occur at a stream of consciousness that occurs at a surface level, and they emerge from words and images and other types of mental activities that pop into our heads as a response to stimuli. And so there is, I guess, an extension of that, a set of beliefs that we hold about ourselves by drawing an inference from prior events. So based on the past, then this is what I imagine will happen in the future, drawing conclusions and placing expectation on what will or won't happen in the future. And more often than not, they're negative views that we form about ourselves. As the name suggests, the thoughts are reflexive and flow automatically. They can't be controlled by us directly without the right tools for the job and the right level of awareness as well. So what are the characteristics of ANTS? So they're automatic, so they just pop into our head unbidden without any effort on our part. And they're distorted. They don't fit all of the facts, or they're just generally wrong. They're unhelpful, and they definitely affect negatively the way that we feel and behave, and the way that we think about ourselves as well, or perceive ourselves. They're believable. We accept them as facts, and it doesn't occur to us to question them. So they're derived from the way that we interpret and perceive the world around us, often stemming from childhood between the ages of about 0 and 7, because at that time there's no separation between who we are and the outside world. So for example, if I was 5 and I saw kids riding a bike, and I said, oh, I want to ride a bike too, and someone said to me, you can't ride that bike, I would take that on board and believe it to be true, or believe it to be a fact, because I haven't yet past that point in my development where I've developed a questioning faculty and developed the capacity to fact check and decide on facts for myself. So how do we spot our ANTS? I wonder whether any of these resonate with you or sound familiar, and you've probably got a host of your own ways that you can spot them, and we'll delve into this a bit deeper. Things like, oh, I couldn't possibly get that job. Can't do anything right. I shouldn't even try. Nobody likes me. I should just stop trying to make friends. And I don't like anything about myself. Only extension of that, and I'm sure that you will have heard this at some point, you know, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm undeserving, I'm so dumb. And they're really hurtful and harmful thoughts. And in actual fact, we wouldn't speak to anyone, people that we love, or even strangers walking down the street, in the same way that we actually speak to ourselves. So I wonder whether you have a nasty, loud inner critic. And I just want to pause here for a moment and ask you to do a little piece of self-inquiry if you haven't done this already. So I guess the question is, has your inner critic practiced and perfected your ANTS over time? Have they become a well-oiled machine? Have they become a habit that you fall back on? And how do they show up for you? I've given you a couple of examples of how they might sound, but I wonder whether you have them. I had a client just the other day who had the belief that, you know, I'm just a nothing. And it was really damaging to her. And she heard that all the time when she was challenging herself. So what unkind things do your inner critics say to you? And if you've got a pen and paper, you might like to capture them so that you can work on them later. And sometimes just the act of writing them down, speaking them out loud, it actually highlights to us how harmful and negative that they are, and we can call ourselves out on them and release them and let them go. So sometimes that is enough to help us move forward. So the self-inquiry process I'd like to invite you to do is to have a think about, what have I conditioned myself to think, feel, and believe that no longer serves me? So if I believe I'm an amazing cook and I'm a great runner and I'm an awesome mum, that's fantastic. But what about those thoughts that don't serve me? You know, I'll never be a success. You know, I'll never make enough money from owning my own business to support my family. What is it that you have conditioned yourself to think, feel, and believe that no longer serves you, that you're ready to let go of? And what do you say to yourself that is cruel and harmful? And lastly, who would I be? How would I show up? And what would I create if I were to let go? And you can imagine, just metaphorically speaking, that your ants, you're carrying them around like a heavy weight on your shoulders every single day. You know, they come to you unbidden, they're running through your mind, they're taking up airtime, they're taking up energy. So imagine if you were able to just literally lift those off and dump them down next to you, how much lighter you would feel, how much more energetic you would feel. And in that, what kind of creative space would you be able to generate to create the kind of reality that you would prefer in your life? So I'll give you just a moment while I answer a couple of inquiries of people that we're going to jump on, to just fill out those self-inquiry, or even just, if you don't have a pen and paper, it's okay. Just have a think through those self-inquiry questions, and you know, you can capture your answers at a later date. Okay, we've got a couple of late apologies. So just moving on from that self-inquiry process, if you haven't finished that, I will share this presentation live into the Whole She group, the Whole She Collective group, and you'll be able to watch it on replay. So if you want to fast forward to this area so that you can capture those self-inquiry questions, then please feel free to revisit them. So the trouble with ants, and this is why we're here today, really, isn't it? Because ants don't feel good. They're heavy, they're unpleasant, and they burden us, they weigh us down. So the trouble with ants is that they're unhelpful, and they can actually be psychologically harmful. So practiced long enough, internalized, believed, they can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, and even depression. So they are heavy and they weigh us down and have a definite mind-body effect if we allow them to go unchecked over a long period of time. They also erode our energy and confidence and our sense of self, our self-identity, which is at that really deep, below the surface level. They leave us feeling stressed, exhausted, and unhappy. And this is really important. They establish a learned behavioral response to triggers or stimuli that creates a really nasty cycle. So the more ants that we have, the worse our ants are, the faster our ants come to us, the more ants we get. And if you've ever touched on the law of attraction, ask, believe, receive. We are all energy. And when we put out an order to the universe, that is focused on negative thoughts and negativity, we're going to look for, find, and create a reality that contains more and more of that. And more on that as we go through. And I think, an extension of the law of attraction, it's definitely true that where our thoughts go, our energy flows. So we are creating more of the same. And we are creating our own reality, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. But the fantastic news is that we have the power to change that at any time. And I'm going to share with you some fantastic tools tonight that you can use to start that process and make a significant change for yourself. So why ants aren't your fault? And in short, it's because we're programmed that way. Firstly, having ants is perfectly normal, so don't beat yourself up about it. But secondly, it's because we're evolutionarily programmed to do so. And this links to a school of thought from a neuroscience perspective called evolutionary negativity bias. So to explain how that works, when we have a positive experience, it will flow through our brain and straight out again. We don't really retain it. So if we have neutral or positive experiences, unless they are coupled with a really heightened emotional elevation, things like joy, the day you got married, the day you gave birth to your first child, we're less likely to retain positive experiences. And that's why, people are much more likely to complain about poor service than they are to put in a testimonial for great service. But the difference is that when we have a negative experience, it causes a stress reaction in our body, and that produces an emotional elevation, and that locks in that memory of that negative experience. And then the brain searches for that next instance. So it's a predictive machine, a bit like a computer. And it searches to complete that loop. So I'm focused on negativity. I've had a negative experience. I'm assuming that more are going to come, and I just keep looking for them. And that's how evolutionary negativity bias keeps us stuck in that ant space. So it doesn't feel good. Why don't we do it? Or why do we do it? Well, it's to keep us safe. So biologically speaking, it stems from prehistoric times. And our brain hasn't really evolved an awful lot for hundreds of thousands of years. And it served a crucial role. Negativity equals danger equals life and death. It was really simple. So if you saw the saber-toothed tiger, the brain would switch. So the blood would flow from the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain, which is responsible for your creative, logical, and structured thinking, to the amygdala at the back of the brain, and you go into fight, flight, and freeze mode. And they were the options. So if you were presented with a saber-toothed tiger, you might fight your way out and hopefully survive. Maybe it hasn't seen you and you could flee, or you freeze and hope that it goes past. And hopefully you live to see another day. And what happens is the biochemical response in the body elevates your cortisol, your adrenal system, and that happens, but it happens for a short period of time. And then your body, once that passes, brings you back down into equilibrium. But when we're in a constant state of stress, and we're constantly revisiting our ants and our negative thoughts, we're putting ourselves in that fight, flight, and freeze mode almost semi-permanently. And that is a massive damage to our energy levels and our positivity and our happiness overall. So there are two types of fear, and this is important. There is legitimate fear, as I just discussed, that saber-toothed tiger effect. Don't walk in front of oncoming traffic, you'll get hit by a car. But then there is a mind story fear, and those mind story fears are fueled by our ants. So they're all of the stories that we tell ourselves using the automatic negative thoughts, and that we keep revisiting and embellishing on and indulging in, and they build up a perception of who we are and what we deserve. The reality is that our body feels every thought we think. So the unconscious mind interprets both types of fear in exactly the same way. So even though being 10 minutes late for work because of traffic, or having someone jump out in front of you and startle you aren't life-threatening, our brain, and therefore our body, will interpret them in exactly the same way. And we use up as much energy as if we were in a life-threatening situation. And this is because of the stress cycle response. And this explains how our inner critic and those ants can turn a single thought into a full-blown mind story fear. So if we have a fear-based thought, so I'm not good enough, we then associate meaning or emotion to it. So who am I to? And that triggers the biochemical responses in the body, that adrenal system response, which results in a change in the brain that I mentioned earlier. So from the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala, and it sets us into fight, flight, and freeze mode. And then at that point, we're literally incapacitated. We're unable to think logically, rationally, and creatively because our body and our brain is just screaming, survive, survive at all costs. So it is a negative spiral, and one that with the right tools we can learn to unpack. And otherwise what happens is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we think, feel, and believe we're not good enough, we'll go out of our way to prove that's the case, to reinforce our sense of self. And importantly, our brain won't let us make a change we don't believe it is possible. So if you've ever used affirmations, you know, I am strong, I am amazing, I am, you know, beautiful. Well, if I looked in the mirror and said, you know, I'm a supermodel, I'm 5 foot nothing, and, you know, 40-plus-year-old mum of 2 kids, my brain is going to go, that's bullshit. So I just can't possibly believe that. So in order to make a shift, we must believe that reality is possible for us. Okay, that's really important. And that's why sometimes using, you know, affirmations can be, you know, detrimental, because we're trying to override and stuff down the negative emotions with overtly positive emotions and affirmations. And there's a disconnect. We're in conflict. So the brain is thinking negatively and we're trying to talk it into thinking positively, and it just won't go there. And I'll explain a bit more about that shortly. But the good news is it is absolutely possible to kill those ants. We can prime ourselves to think more positively. We can choose our state at any time. That's our energy and the way in which we show up. So if you think about our state and priming yourself, do you go to bed early the night before so that when the alarm goes in the morning, you're ready to jump out of bed and, you know, tackle the day? Or do you sit up watching Netflix until, you know, 1, knowing that, you know, you're 3 hours short on sleep, you won't want to get up, and then you're grumpy the second the alarm goes off, and then your morning spirals? We can choose to flip that on its head anytime we want. So, you know, we can choose to go to bed earlier, but we can also choose not to be grumpy in the moment. And I'll show you some strategies for how to do that. You know, and my kids are my best teachers of this. I'm telling them all the time that they have the capacity to choose their state and to prime themselves for, you know, a positive day or experience. And so I practice what I preach, and I teach what I preach as well every day, and it reinforces these messages for me every day through my children. So I'm grateful to them for that. Now, we're also, it's also possible to learn a new, positive, empowered way of thinking. So we are all blessed with neuroplasticity, which means that our brain is able to learn new things. So we could be 110 sitting in a nursing home, and someone could teach us a new card game. You know, we're unlikely to be able to learn to run a marathon at 110, but certainly our brain is able to form new neural pathways and learn new things and to make them a habit. And what happens is that when we reinforce those habits over time through learning, the old habits actually die away. So those old neural pathways just die away, and they're replaced with the new ones, which is the habit, behavior, and beliefs that we want to practice on a regular basis. So at this point, you're probably thinking, well, so how do we kill those ants? And the answer is with the kindness compass. Now, this is a 4-step easy process to help us kill those ants. And this is something I have been trained in, learned, practiced, you know, embraced and taught for years now. And I know that this stuff is powerful and that it works, but sometimes it can actually sound a little too easy and people might give it lip service. So bear with me and dig deep on this and practice, 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 because if we're not practicing our new way of being, it will not be formed into a habit, and we won't kick those ants, we'll fall back into our ant thinking. So number one is awareness, and awareness is our superpower. So call out your inner critic. As I said before in that self-inquiry process, capture what you say to yourself, write it down, talk it out loud, speak it to a friend, call yourself out on it. And, in that moment, things like, oh, I see, that's my old conditioned response. But we have a choice if we allow ourselves to go down that path or not. So writing them down, saying them out loud, and reviewing our triggers and considering what is in our conscious mind and what is default. So really unpacking and understanding ourselves better so that we can seek to create change in our life. And practice turning them around. So for any ant that we have, any negative belief or limiting belief that we have, there is a true or truer story available to us. So what is that? If it's, I'm not capable, I couldn't do that. Maybe the flip is, I am capable. If it's, I'm unworthy of being loved, I am worthy. We were born worthy. As a baby, we were born and, we didn't say to our parents or say to ourselves, oh, I won't cry now for a feed. We cried and our parents tended to us because we were born worthy. And I'm open to learning. So turning those ants around and coming up with an alternate strategy for how you'll view them is really important, because then you can make the connection between, oh, my old thought was X, Y, and Z, my new thought is X. Okay. And practicing that, writing them down, and the work by Byron Katie, if you've ever experienced that before, is a really good process. It's not something I've gone into tonight, to help you with those turnarounds, and perhaps that's something that we can focus on another night, because it gives you a 4-step process to turn your thoughts around. The second is to pause. Now, this is a 3-step ABC process, and it's simple, but it's surprisingly potent. So for maximum effect, I invite you to do this 2 to 3 times a day. So you might do it when you're on the toilet, you might do it in the shower, you might do it, when you're sitting, on the lounge. Make it a habit. It could be when you have your coffee, if you're a coffee drinker. So I'm going to sit back here for a moment to show you this. So taking your hands, placing them on the belly so you can feel the rise and fall of your belly. So accepting those thoughts when they come to you and just noticing them and allowing them to float on by like clouds in the sky, not associating meaning or emotion to them, not trying to fight them or to push them away or override them with that toxic positivity that we talked about before. And what happens is it takes all of the energy out of those ants, and it gives us a chance to fit in B, which is breathe. Now, the breath is used to reset our nervous system response or our stress response that's been triggered. And we can do that inside of 60 seconds. So if you think of, you've got all day, if 3 times a day you drop in and do this breathing exercise, it's going to make a profound shift in the way that you manage your ants and the way you show up for yourself. So placing your hand on your belly and just breathing in and out, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just leaving your hands really gentle on your belly and just focusing on your hands as they're expanding and contracting as you breathe in and out. And if a thought does come into your mind, again, just allowing it to float on by like a cloud in the sky and bringing your thoughts back solely to the breathing, to the breath, and to your tummy rising and falling. Now, you could choose to set a timer for that if you like, so that you know that you're doing it for 60 seconds, or you could do it just multiple times a day and practice it and make it a habit. And what you're going to do is then invoke that when you are feeling triggered. Okay, so acceptance is key. We're not judging the thought, the feeling, or the behavior. We're allowing it just to be. We're dropping in and breathing and resetting the nervous system, taking it back through neutral. And the last one is choose. So we can choose to think a thought that makes us feel happier. So it might bring you relief, it might make you smile, but you need to allow yourself to really feel that happier thought. So it's a bit like when you have booked a holiday, and I've just booked a holiday to Thailand for January, and I'm so excited after COVID to be able to go away. I am living that heightened state of excitement every time I think about my holiday, every time I research where we're staying, what activities we'll do, what the weather will be like. And you can do that also. So if there is a time, a moment that brings you a lot of joy and happiness, that makes you feel good, practice that feeling. I had a client recently who said that the second they get in their caravan, and another travel related example, the second they get into their caravan, they're on holiday, that's it. So it could be the caravan is parked 2 meters down the road, but that's okay. That feels like they're on holiday. So I want you to practice that feeling of heightened happiness. And that fires off our body's happy hormones, and we really feel the shift in our body. And that is how we can prime our state and choose how we feel, and create that elevated feeling within our body, which is the exact opposite of that stress response that we talked about earlier. The next step is cancel. And I love this. So when you catch yourself, again, you're not allowing yourself to berate yourself. You're hearing those pesky ants creep back into your conscious awareness, but you're canceling the thought. So if you hear yourself saying, oh, I'm no good at that, just say a big loud erase, replace. And you could use any number of phrases to really put the brakes on and cause a pattern interrupt to stop that thought in its tracks. And in fact, this process should be fun, and it will become even funnier based on the process that you choose. So it could be shift the thought, shift the thought, shift the thought. It could be stop, cancel, clear. It could be cut, cancel. I have nothing to fear, my love is here. So whatever it works for you to create that pattern interrupt and makes you, break in that pattern of negative thinking and shift out of it is fine. So have a think about it and have a play. And I would really love if you share in the DM or in the Whole She Collective the cancel process that you've decided to use. But the key is that once you've practiced that cancel process, so erase, replace, it's choosing a more positive, empowering thought, feeling, or behavior instead. So it's turning it around. So if I thought, I'm not lovable, people don't like me, turning that around, of course I'm lovable. Lots of people like me. My family love me. I have lots of friends. Whatever it is that turns that thought around, and practice that. And again, drop in and feel it as well for maximum effect. Number 4 is gratitude, shifting into gratitude. And it is the easiest and most powerful way to shift your thought process. So when you feel that ant coming on, you've just gone into conscious awareness of it, you can say to yourself, oh, I'm spiraling out of control. What am I grateful for? Flick that switch. So we live in rural Victoria, and we live in a court, and it's about 1 kilometre to the end of our road, and the cattle yards are there, and there is a metal cutout of a cow. It's got the name Dave on it, and my dad ruined it for me because he said, Narelle, it's a cow. It shouldn't be called Dave. It should be called like Mary or something. Anyway, we're all very wedded to this cow, the kids, my husband, so when we go out, everyone says, good morning, Dave. Good evening, Dave. Good night, Dave. A couple of weeks ago, someone ran over Dave and Dave was flattened. And, the community around here and lots of the kids in the area were quite sad about it. And today we noticed that Dave is back, he's been resurrected, and someone has put a bike helmet on him. So that brought me so much joy, and it brought the children joy. And I sat in gratitude for a moment, and I thought, thank you to the person who placed the helmet on. Just that sense of fun and lightness, and it's brought so much joy, and it's actually become the topic of a local Facebook thread as well. So slipping into gratitude about all the little things in life is so important. It could be a hot cup of tea as soon as the kids are off to school, or buying lunch once a week. Whatever it is that brings you joy. And what I recommend though is that when you are focusing on gratitude, focus on things that are inside of your control. Okay, the little things. Find joy in the little things. If they're dependent on having hundreds of dollars in the bank and you don't, then it's a barrier to practicing gratitude. Okay, so something little and small that you can do for yourself every single day. So, for me, I have a GFF, gratitude friend or buddy who I have been trading gratitude with every single day for over 3 years. And every day we share 3 or more things that we're grateful for. And what that's done is it's trained us to focus our attention towards positive things, towards what we are grateful for, and we look for the things in our day that give us that sense of gratitude. So it's a way to retrain the brain to look for the good, which is, again, the exact opposite of allowing those ants to take over. And so lastly, the master key. The master key to rewiring your thoughts and your habits is going through neutral before you choose the positive thought. So I mentioned before toxic positivity. So if we're feeling really negative and we've got a whole bunch of negative thoughts going through our mind, and we're trying to stuff that down with a whole bunch of, I should be grateful, I should be happy, I should be, should. It's literally not going to hit home for us. We're just creating more expectation that we're placing on ourselves that we're going to find ourselves coming short on. Okay, so using that breathing practice to calm the nervous system down, to go back through neutral, allow the nervous system to reset before we then choose our powerful and positive thoughts, means that we get to really process them. And in order to really process them, we have to produce that elevated feeling that comes with them. So remember to sit in that with your breathing and practice those powerful positive feelings, and remember those times when you've been completely and utterly, joyful or carefree or happy, and maybe come up with a library of times where you felt fantastic that you could tap into whenever you like. And I also encourage you to establish an accountability buddy as well. So someone that you get along well with, have a similar core values, who is going to be as diligent as you are, and keep you accountable. So I might miss a day, but I'll never miss 2 days. And same with my GFF. And we have been doing this practice for 3 years. And it is really an antidote for those ants. And I might add that even though all of the work that I've been doing, and for many years, both personally and through the work that I do, I can still fall into ants. I can still fall into negative thinking. So I'm not immune. No one is immune. And really the key here is practice, repetition, and conscious awareness. So I'd love to know your key takeaway for today. I know that a number of people couldn't jump on tonight and will be watching this on replay. So feel free to share your biggest light bulb moment from today's presentation in the Whole She Collective Facebook group. Have a think about what that key takeaway is, and then consider what will be your action to integrate the learning. So if we just listen to something and then move on, we're not necessarily going to integrate the learning from it and create the shifts that we really desire. So in order to solidify the learning that you've done today, I'd like to invite you to ask yourself, what will I commit to doing within 24 hours to embed my learning? So that might look like practicing your ABC process. It might be implementing a gratitude practice. If doing multiple things feels too hard for you, and it can feel overwhelming when you're like a learner driver and you're in the car for the first time with your learner's plates on trying to, shift the gear stick, choose one thing. Just choose one thing that you're going to focus on. So maybe it's recognizing your ANTS and then using a cancel process to short circuit the thinking. Whatever it is, I would love to hear from you and understand what works for you, how you're embedding the practice, and if you've had value from the presentation that I've shared tonight. So where to from here? So you have two choices. You can strive to do your best and cancel out your ANTS using the strategies that I've shared with you here tonight. And if you do, I wish you all the best. And I am, genuinely interested in hearing how you go, what you've made of this information and how you've put it into practice. And if you have any questions, then certainly please let me know. The other option is to book in a call to have a chat to me about how we can work together to support you with accountability to really eradicate those ANTS and implement the full whole she transformation that you truly desire. Now, if you go ahead and book that free call, if you're ready to kill off your ANTS for good and you're ready to feel lighter and brighter and happier in yourself, I will share a link in the group to book a free obligation virtual coffee with me. And anyone that does that will receive a free gift. So I'll share that with you in the group after the call. So thank you so much for joining tonight and watching on replay. If you're ready to rewire the brain and body and kill off those ANTS so that you can feel happier, healthier and brighter, I look forward to hearing from you. And let me know if you have any questions. Oh, there's some chat, so bear with me. Abby, so you've definitely experienced ANTS before and you've heard things like this before, like what's the point of starting? I'm going to fail anyway. Yes. And when you call yourself out on those, I'd be interested to hear, does it change your perception of how real they are or how they feel? So Abby, your key takeaway from tonight's masterclass is to become aware of ANTS and move into neutral before shifting the gear stick, plus connect with a GFF. Yes, beautiful. So that is more than your one thing, which is absolutely fantastic. So gold star to you, Abby. I hope you enjoy the process and thanks for coming along tonight, and I will speak to you soon.